The way the world does business has changed. Today, every enterprise needs to tap into the limitless potential of digital technologies and platforms to connect, operate, and perform better. Since 2002, we have helped our customers remain ahead of the technology curve through time-relevant, best-in-class technology and digital solutions. Our journey began in 2002, with Tata Sons acquiring a 25% stake in BSNL, India's largest player in long-distance services, with the aim to make the internet fit for business and spur global connectivity. Over the next few years, the communications entity expanded into global markets with new product launches and strategic acquisitions. And to serve our customers better, we consolidated our business operations across India, the US, the UK, and Hong Kong into one entity, Tata Communications.
Hello, and welcome to this economic impact session, Future-Proofing Networks for a Digital Age. My name is Dexter Tilia, and I'm lead analyst for technology and telecoms at EIU, part of the Economics Group, and I will be moderating today's proceeding. First of all, I'd like to thank Tata Communications for sponsoring this event and making it possible for all of you to tune in. We're doing this webinar 2 years to the month since most of the world entered lockdown following the COVID-19 pandemic. And this forced businesses to do two things. One, reimagine the operation. It also acted as a clear accelerator for digital services. After stress testing the digital infrastructure, businesses are now focusing on preparing the network to withstand the next crisis. The need for agile networks comes with the cost of implementing new technology and also the demand of securing sensitive data. So how can businesses reimagine networks for the future? The next phase in network technology is turning towards bringing organizations closer together. Networks are no longer just hardware-driven. Software now plays a crucial role in defending competition and success in industry, ranging from healthcare to financial services. An hyper-connected ecosystem tends to bring businesses together, helping them to become much more efficient. But also, network innovation is likely to face regulatory challenges as government grapple with rule controls the global digital infrastructure. Over the next hour, we'll explore the players and factors that will determine the next step in this transition. And for that, I am delighted to announce and to introduce our three speakers. We have Genius Wong, who is the Chief Technology Officer for Tata Communications, Tom Wheeler, a former chairman of the FCC and now visiting Fieldwide Brookings, and Partha Chakraborty, Associated VP and Head of Cloud Security, Innovation and R&D at Humana. Welcome, everyone. So we're very lucky today to have a perspective, I guess, three of the key elements of the entire ecosystem, a telecoms operator, somebody from industry, and somebody from regulation. But I want to start with a common question for all of you, basically asking you, what has been the single biggest change you've seen in the last 2 years, basically since COVID hit? Let's start with Genius.
Well, the single biggest change I have seen is actually enterprise readiness to embrace digital transformation. Before pandemic, which is about 2 years ago, I see some major US and also Europe headquarter enterprises have been growing their digital capabilities to drive a digital first business model. But in other regions, enterprises have only started or begin to start the digital transformation journey. But now almost every enterprise that I talk to are accelerating the pace of digital transformation, so that they can be much more digital centric and agile, so that they can also compete more effectively in this digital world. So what we also see is that with the shift to internet and cloud, the traffic direction shift of the enterprise WAN traffic has actually accelerated in the last 2 years too. So the massive increase in mobile workforce, accelerated cloud adoption, both the SaaS and IaaS, and also overall enterprise traffic is definitely increasing on internet and cloud traffic. So for example, for us, we have enabled 98% of our employees to work from home within just 2 weeks. So what we have observed in our proposals to our customers, the hybrid WAN mix is about 80% internet now compared to about 20 to 30% like 2 to 3 years back. So which means that as a result, I think the attack surface of enterprises also increased with the security perimeter has actually completely dissolved. So that is what I actually see as the, and customers much more focused on, the cybersecurity area, in also protecting the new digital foundation that they have set up.
Yeah, so basically enterprise readiness, companies realizing that digital transformation is not a question of yes or no, but of when, really. Tom, what about you?
Well, I think the biggest change in the network world is that we're not talking about networks anymore, at least hardware-based networks. We're talking about software and the fact that the things that used to be done in hardware in a centralized network structure are now being done in software on a distributed basis, which has just opened up not only great opportunities and great potentials, but great new challenges. And the challenge from a regulatory point of view is how are you going to deal with the security needs inside that new environment? If it is a software environment, we know that software is essentially insecure. If it is a distributed environment, we know that we're talking about new potential attack vectors. And if it is a software-driven environment, software runs on standards, and how are those standards established with security as a forethought rather than an afterthought? So the networks are new, and so are the challenges that they create, and so must we think anew about how we secure those networks.
Yes, and I think you're right. I mean, we just had Mobile Congress about a month ago, and I think for the first time, 5G wasn't everywhere. I mean, 5G was part of it, but it wasn't just about 5G. It was about the network and what we can do. So I think you're right in the sense that there's no kind of network per se. It's about services in there.
The power of
Parsa,
5G.
what about?
Everybody needs to understand. Just Dexter, just let me interrupt for one
Sure.
minute here. Everybody thinks 5G is a product. Buy my 5G service is what all the operators are telling you. It's not a product. It's a technology. And what that technology does is to virtualize what used to be done in network hardware. And that then triggers both the kind of opportunities Janius was talking about in terms of new kinds of enterprise activity, as well as the kind of threats that I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Parsa, what about your perspective?
Yeah, I think I agree with both, Janius and Tom. Last 2 years after pandemic, that has been actually the testing time for all the concepts we have been talking and preparing our organizations for last 3 to 4 years. First, the perimeter is gone, right? Now the user can be anywhere. They can connect and need your resources anytime. And they need access to your resources that you need to provide them to do their job from any device, right? So the any factor is coming in. You connect from anywhere, you need to connect anytime, you need to connect from any device. Now, the mode of connectivity started leveraging internet a lot more. That opens up the attack surface even broader, right? The second factor, what we are seeing, right, is that as Tom mentioned, 5G and carriers have improved, giving more capacity, any device, a lot of IoT and connectivity. And on the carrier side, you are leveraging more. They also have some of the other security attack surfaces, right? Be it your signaling vulnerabilities, right? There are a lot of protocols like SS7 and SIP. Those days when those were written, those did not have a lot of the security focus in mind. I mean, they were created to serve a purpose. Security was, for many applications, were sort of an afterthought. Now, when you incorporate security as an afterthought, that makes it even much more harder to do security in a better way, because natively it is not part of your product. You need to add a lot of add-ons. So you're using different technologies, adoption of 5G and even your telecom carrier is increasing. That increases your attack surface. Perimeter dissolving, that increases your attack surface for security, right? And the third factor is that availability is also has become another major concern, because all of your users are remote. You had certain capacity on your enterprise network. You always build capacity that we should be able to uh, provide connectivity to all the users if needed. But all of a sudden that became in a day or week. I have been working in companies during pandemic where the capacity for remote user was so constrained that users had to be given different time slot. That if you're a business user, you connect from 9 to 12. If you're an ID support, you only need to connect during daytime. If you're a software developer, you connect after 6 o'clock, right? Because we could not handle capacity. And then technology also responded very well. The tech industry also responded very well during this time with all software driven as a service option, software driven network, software driven perimeter that solves the capacity issues for your remote connectivity. So to close my thought, to sum it up, I will say like your attack surface has increased. You're putting a lot of your concepts, which were so far in PowerPoint, in real acid test right now in last 2 years. And the good news is that we have tested and proven that, yes, we can do it successfully. Now we should be ready even for a bigger challenge, but need to keep security is not an afterthought. Let's start thinking about it from the beginning. What should be the next big challenge? Are we going to be ready?
Absolutely. So I think to sum up your three contribution, first one is that enterprise are starting to use technology in the real world, and it's not of yes or no, but of when. The network is not so much a network anymore. It's about all the different capabilities that can be done. And obviously it's about putting all the theories we've had for maybe the last 5 years into practice. You mentioned quite a lot about security. I think we'll come back to it a bit later on when we talk about preparedness. Before we go to that, I wanted to go back to Genius and kind of ask, in terms of, we've seen a lot of changes, but we'll see even more changes going forward. So what kind of changes will we see, and how does it help telecoms operator in getting that kind of enterprise business that is seeking? And basically, what can the telecoms market offer the broader industry?
Well, the good thing is that, what we are seeing, there's a lot of opportunities out there because whether it's healthcare, education, logistics and transport, manufacturing, retail, finance, and banking, you name it, they are all moving to cloud and internet. And that has been happening accelerated due to the pandemic. And they are also building an architecture, that we, Tom just mentioned about the software driven, is agile, also is data driven, so that they can actually quickly adapt to support new business requirements. So, on one hand, we're also seeing enterprises, all are actively deploying technologies like SD-WAN, SD-Branch, and also actively migrating to, use internet and cloud as part of the major strategy. However, basically, to implement these technologies really does of their current IT estates, applying the right policy settings, delivering a smooth migration, and optimizing the performance on an ongoing basis. So, a lot of these cannot actually solve all the performance issues just by, plugging it in. All right. So therefore, so that's the reason why for telecom companies like us, we do actually feel that that is a huge opportunity that we can actually work with the enterprises to actually offer integrated solutions, across all these different areas to actually help them to speed up the transformation. And for, us, like Tata Communications, we do see ourselves as, partner to our, customers in their transformation journey, because we have been seeing, many of these scenarios, and there are some key focus areas which has been quite consistent across all our customers. The first being, embracing the internet cloud. We just talked about it, looking for ways to actually deliver superior customer experience in a secure manner. the need to expand across regions, geographies, and to be able to collaborate internally with their employees and externally with their customers to deliver the superior, customer experience, and also the need to actually embed much more intelligence to deliver superior customer experience with the new architecture they're building. And the new architecture also has to enable the customer to gain efficiency and productivity, plus the agility, which is extremely important as all the learnings we have with the pandemic and currently all the geopolitical situation, which customer need to address quickly, all the potential challenges that can come, their way and our way. All right. So of course, also managing risk as we are exposed to much more, cloud and internet, and cybersecurity is definitely the key to, in every single of these, area. So, to just sum it up is that I see there's a lot of new business opportunities and also how we can actually partner with our enterprises on all this digital transformation journey moving forward. That is what we are seeing. Our role is going to be like that.
Yeah, so basically a much greater potential for business from your side, much more different types of clients, much more different things, and I guess also cooperation with partners to do different things because you can't really do everything from your end. You're specializing in certain things. So I think that kind of leads me to a question for Tom in terms of, we're seeing now more and more new business, kind of new industry, new sectors kind of coming in using technology, and kind of non-traditional players coming into new areas. So what should a regulatory framework look like? And should, I guess, a tech regulator or a telecoms regulator start looking at other sectors or non-traditional tech actors in a way that start to have an impact on the market?
Well, the challenge of a regulator is that we always define 21st century issues in 20th century terms and propose 19th century solutions, right? And so what we need to do at this point in time is to recognize the kinds of things that Janius and Partha have been talking about, and how this is not the traditional network. And governments around the world have the challenge that they have two challenges. The first challenge is that the statutes under which they operate were written with industrial era assumptions. And how do you adopt those? And the second is that particularly when you're talking about security, the bad guys can move a lot faster than government can. And the bad guys are well equipped to quickly respond to whatever government does. And so the challenge becomes, how do you introduce agility into oversight? And agility and regulation are not necessarily words that are used in the same sentence. But we need to come up with a new paradigm to oversee the security, because the economic challenges work against letting the marketplace solve the issue. I mean, the reason why a company invests is to get a return. And cyber investment doesn't really show up as the kind of things you report to shareholders and say, oh, here's my great return. And secondly is the exposure that is created by the fact that the internet is nothing more than a collection of connected networks. So that if one company is responsible, quote unquote, and does make those investments, that can be undone by the company with whom they connect that doesn't. And so we need a common set of expectations and a new, more agile kind of oversight to deal with the challenges that are created by these exciting new software-driven opportunities.
Yes, I mean, it's a long, long-held view and long-held delay between innovation and regulation. Innovation comes in, regulators look at it, takes a while, and then by the time the regulation comes in, then innovation has kind of moved 2, 3 steps ahead, and it's always difficult to find out. And we've kind of seen it a bit. I don't want to discuss the metaverse too much today, but basically tech companies are going to the metaverse. Regulators are barely looking into it. So that's kind of a very difficult things to do. Moving on to your part of kind of your industry perspective, from your kind of point of view, what are you exactly looking to get from those new network and new digital capabilities? Is it about business continuity, cost saving, new revenue stream, all of the above, something else? What's your perspective on that?
So you pretty much said everything, right? I mean, there are many different drivers. I worked in different industries. I worked in financial services. I worked in healthcare. In some companies, the drive to move to cloud and embracing digital transformation is to accelerate the speed of innovation, right? I mean, most of the time, you want to come up with a product and service and want to reach out to your customer, before your competition. In some other cases, the driver is providing the better service, retaining and growing the customer base. That also includes financial services as well as healthcare industry. And in the third case, right, especially post-pandemic world, right, embracing cloud and giving the ability to connect from anywhere and anytime from any device, that's just not possible with your hardware-based lockdown infrastructure, restricting yourself to the data center and backhauling your traffic to your data center only. So these are the different scenarios why we need to embrace digital transformation. And depending on the industry and depending on the company and company's vision and mission and the goal, it can be a combination of any of this in different proportions. But pretty much every company goes to and embraces digital based on these three or four drivers. Now, again, being a security person, I mean, I like Tom's examples of like regulation is trying to solve a 21st century problem with a mindset of 20th century issues, but not being agile and applying the 19th century controls. I mean, that is actually a very good, I like that example. But being a security person, I see like there are two aspects of it. Every company, no matter whether you are in a health insurance or you are in a financial services, or maybe in manufacturing and production, every day in our decision making, we have to take certain risks. There is nothing in this world called risk-free, right? And nothing in this world we can do risk-avert. Even a doctor, when doing a surgery or something, there is a certain amount of risk involved. And based on that risk, there is a clear representation of that risk, and based on like doctor and patient, they make a call, right, whether to take that risk or not. In other words, nothing is risk-free in this world. So every business want to grow, right, want to bring more value to the shareholder by taking risk. If regulations were not there, probably people will be more like focused about making money and not looking at the risk. So it's a good thing that the regulators are coming in and basically telling, okay, you have to do this, you have to do that in order to keep your, like your business and your customer, your data and information as secure. From a security standpoint, what we see in the industry, that is actually no different from the basics that we used to do like 5 years back. There are two aspects of security. One is doing a compliance and regulations checkbox. If you do that, you have to do like 10 different things that your regulations and compliance ask. That is to ensure like you stay away from jail, right? You are not in a financial trouble, you are not in a brand reputation or in a regulatory issue. But that's not enough, right? When you do security, your bad guys are not only looking at the regulators want you to disclose a breach in 48 hours. They are actually looking at it as the window of opportunity. Hey, they want you to disclose in 48 hours. That means you don't have an infrastructure. Probably you will not invest in an infrastructure which can detect a breach or which can detect an anomaly within probably 5 minutes. So for me, if I'm a bad guy, my window of opportunity is this, right? They are not going by the books, what regulation and compliance are saying, right? They are more agile and innovating. They want to ensure like they can tap on the capability and the opportunity. So for the security person, we need to ensure we meet the compliance checks and what the regulators are asking. On the other side, with the increased adoption of all the digital services, we need to ensure we take our security basics to the next level, right? Enabling the capabilities of defense in depth and doing the right practices and leveraging technology to be able to do it in an automated fashion, in a repeatable fashion, and in a sustainable manner, in a more agile way, as opposed to depending on manual processes and procedures. So I know I touched upon like multiple things. Bottom line is that with this digital transformation, the life of a security guy is already miserable. It is going to get worse, but you need to focus on doing regulation, which is a must. But on top of it, you need to keep doing your security things better in a consistent manner. And for that, you need to leverage like advanced technologies like AI and machine learning. There is no other way.
So you would say that you need kind of a combination of both having a better type of regulation or an updated type of regulation, but also understanding how to use those new tools that you have available to you. Would that be correct?
That is correct. I mean, regulations has to be there. Without regulations, people will not probably implement a lot of the things just for looking at the dollar numbers, right? I need to get more customer, I need to do more business. So that means I need to take more risk. But regulations actually keeps your risks under the, a certain threshold, right? You keep checking that. But regulations is one side of it. In order to secure it, you need to advance your security capabilities, and that can be done through advanced technologies, which are coming more and more these days.
Yes, and Genius, have you found something similar when you've kind of been going to clients and been going to enterprise in terms of the new capabilities that you have available to you from the new networks and the fact that regulation maybe has not caught up or maybe is not helping you kind of rolling out those new solutions? Are you seeing something similar as well?
I think, a lot of these is actually, especially on cybersecurity, with all this digital, platform we're setting up, there's always discovery of new areas that we need to actually protect. And, the bad guys is always basically faster than a lot of people in discovering all these shortcomings. But, to me, it's like regulation would definitely help, to actually help us to force us to actually mitigate some of this, but also but however we do actually need a much more agile regulation, because frankly speaking, like what Tom was talking about, we are basically maybe as even a century behind in terms of how regulations is being set up. And also a lot of times, because it's not actually defined clearly, we have to somehow like fitting a square peg into a round hole, trying to figure out what actually will apply to some of the new areas of services that we are actually rolling out. And especially when we're actually going to be moving to much more new advanced technology, as we already seeing that how technology is actually driving a lot of fundamental change across industries, and also the incremental value that we will be able to derive from these technology. So therefore, with the new network that we, or digital platform that we are setting up, all of us is trying to capitalize on the new and upcoming technology, and also especially the next phase that I think we actually mentioned about is a lot of things is going to be on the 5G, Wi-Fi 6, IoT, AI, Edge, and SASE. All this combination of wireless transmission speeds and also computing power is going to enable much higher level of intelligence to reside at some of the network edge, and also resulting in a lot of proliferation of application, which is not possible before. For example, this 5G deployments with layering AI and edge computing will enable a lot of intelligent Internet of Everything. So historically, these connections are really constrained by the network as bandwidth, latency, capacity, issues all limits the breadth of the use cases. But with 5G's, ultimate enhanced capabilities will open up a lot of these, industry use cases that may not be actually possible before. And also, will also optimize a lot of existing use cases. But a lot of these, will actually require deployment of basically AI algorithms, actually where you're going to store the data, and also, because of all this massive of Internet of Everything, we won't know how regulatory is going to be seeing this because a lot of these will touch a lot of pretty sensitive areas like like data storage, where we're going to store it, the data privacy laws, etc. So while there's a lot of interesting opportunity with the new up and coming actually technologies in this area, I think a clearer way of how regulatory in each country, because we're not talking about regulatory in there's one regulator, right? It's actually there's a regulatory in every country. All right, how are these new industry use cases related to all this area? What is the new regulation that is going to be set in this area? I think that is something that I think a lot of countries still figuring it out. All right, but that
Yes,
will actually affect how we're going to deploy the solutions to customers globally, not just in one country, because it cut across many regions and geography.
yes,
Can I
and I
pick
think
up on that for a second, Dexter?
yes, absolutely, Tom. Go ahead.
Janius makes a terrific point that there needs to be a new approach. She talks about Internet of Everything and the wonders of it and AI and ML in the network. The reality is that every one of those everythings is a new attack vector.
Yes.
Which makes it all the more important that you have those kinds of capabilities inside to discover bad things that are going on. But let me go to her broader point about regulation and how it has to be developed country by country, and just it is incumbent upon the industry to begin to come to grips with the need for regulation rather than the constant knee jerk of, oh no, we can't have regulation. Regulation is bad. And in order to accomplish that, we need to have the companies help educate policymakers on the concepts of agile management. We're still running government on structures that were built for industrial management, that there's not a single digital company out there that practices anymore. You put out an MVP and you constantly improve it based on technology and based on marketplace realities. How do we bring that kind of thinking to government? And one of my concerns, one of my complaints, I must say, when I was chairman, was that companies would always come in and say, "Oh, this is too rigid. This is going to hurt innovation. This is going to hurt investment." And at the same point in time, they don't want the regulator to become agile. They would rather use the non-agile industrial approach as an argument against regulation than to say, okay, we've got a real challenge here. Let's figure out how we fix it. Let's figure out how we bring 21st century management techniques into government rather than these 19th century techniques.
Absolutely, and I could see Parsa kind of nodding there. Do you agree with that? I guess that statement in the sense that industry must be taking the lead in terms of making sure the regulation work for them, but obviously work for the broader country and company as well.
So I will say like industry and government together, right? It's basically a team, like one side alone cannot take it. So two aspects, I like just my thoughts, right? Number one, we all are aware of what's happening right now with that Russia and Ukraine situation. And there has been some government directives and legislations coming out that we need to increase the monitoring threshold, especially for US companies, right? And the threshold says that, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, like I think within 96 hours, you have to disclose to the right authorities regarding any quote unquote potential significant incident, right? Now, the definition of that significant incident is not clear, right? It also becomes subjective depending on the companies, right? Do I consider every single attempt to read my data as a significant incident? Or do I consider somebody is trying to wiping out 500 GB of data stored in cloud, which has sensitive client information, is significant? So I find that in those cases, the directive is coming, which does not have the specificity. Because of that, the objective is really good, right? Yes, if we can have the agility to report something in 96 hours or even sooner, that's always better. But because the directive does not have the specificity, it becomes so subjective, even within government agencies, right? That some government agencies will be able to do it for certain things, some government agencies won't do it for certain things. And when it comes to the industry and private sector, the same thing. One company is doing it in a different way, another company is doing it in a different way. So that, for me, sometimes defeats the purpose of the good intent. So to summarize, I will say that I completely align. Industry has to come forward, has to work with government. At the same time, both the parties have to come to a little bit of lower level with types of the specific discussion. What exactly needs to be done? Make it one single standard. Do not have a separate standard for government agencies, have a different standard for private agencies, unless it is a matter of national security or something where government needs to have even more protection than the private entities. But have one standard that applies to all, if possible, and remove that subjectivity around it, that based on my interpretation, I do something. Yes, sorry, go
Tom,
ahead,
you wanted
Tom.
to come back on that. That's all right. Tom, you
I
wanted
mean,
to come back on that?
Partha makes a really good point. And one of the things, because of the fact that we're still stuck in this utility regulation concept in the United States, that our government has ended up doing is counting on the Defense Department and the standards that the Defense Department establishes for what they purchase to end up being the way in which you establish governmental expectations for what should exist in the marketplace. And that leads to the kind of bifurcation that Partha was talking about, which is you have one set of rules for this group and one set of rules for, or absence of rules for that group. And we have got to move beyond that. I mean, there is one segment of government that is doing a very admirable job in protecting the security of digital networks. And how do we take those ideas and move them across as expectations for non-military activities?
Absolutely. I mean, it's about making sure that we're not in silos anymore and trying to take back capacity from everywhere. And I think kind of leads me to move to kind of a broader point in terms of how can we be prepared to make sure with those new networks, which are going to give us a lot of opportunities, but how can we be prepared for any kind of risk coming in, and what can Or can a network also be prepared for that? So maybe Genius, if you have some views on that and kind of
Yeah,
explain what could happen and what you have on that. Yeah, please go ahead.
I was thinking, question, to also Tom, because we talk about cybersecurity and security, the risk, but what about for services that is, which is really global in nature, which is because it's now making it very hard to apply jurisdictional, boundaries to like traffic that actually traverses many countries, like services like international, like for example, Teams. A user in Estonia, can access the functionality in the US, such as Teams platform. So is that an Estonian matter or is it a US matter? Could it be basically possibly something like EU, European Electronic Communications Code set up for a more regulatory regime and encourage, countries to offer it, ignoring the security side. But, there's a lot of these kind of areas that actually, kind of, restrict the ability for, cross global communications. I just want to hear, Tom's, your thought on this.
Well, I think you raise a really good point, Janius, and that is that all international policies end up being domestic policies, right? And right now, what we've got are domestic policies that have yet to be harmonized, and we really need to be working on that. Now, the interesting thing is that there is one group of nations, China and Russia, have actually signed a treaty, an accord, saying that they want to promote a new kind of IP and to use the International Telecommunication Union as a new standard setting / regulator for the internet. Which at least I personally think would be disastrous for the multi-stakeholder environment that has brought us the internet. But those of us who support an open internet need to step up and say, okay, what are we going to do to establish the rules as the alternative to rebuilding the internet to have more of a top-down control structure, which is what the new IP proposal is about. And so there is one group of nations that has stepped forward on this. I would hope that Western liberal democracies will similarly organize themselves to step forward. And to get there, they've got to get past we have an expression called where you stand depends upon where you sit. And they've got to get past the domestic issues.
Yes, the multi-stakeholder governance model versus the cyber sovereignty governance model. And that kind of leads me to a question that tech has been very, very global or fairly global in the last 30 years. We are now moving into far more fragmentation. You mentioned Russia and China trying to do different things. US trying, finally looking into regulation. EU has been there for quite a while. So does that mean we have definitely one winner globally, or does that mean we have kind of a much more fragmented model with kind of two different systems in multi-country? Does anybody have a view on that?
Well, everybody talks. Go ahead, Partha.
Go ahead, Partha.
Oh, thank you. So I think it's going to be interesting, and there will be some differences the way it will be implemented in different countries, even within EU. Even we are all following the news. Not every country is exactly on the same page on many of the implementation aspects, right, of the things. In principle, everybody is aligned, but when it comes to implementation, there are subtle differences. So one pattern that we will see, in my opinion, is that the impact of like self-reliance and building nearshore capabilities or anti-globalization, there will be some trend. In some countries it will be more, in some countries it will be less, but there will be some trend for sure. It used to be a fully globalized thing, not only for technology, or be it software or hardware or manufacturing, even for service. If you look at it, like most of the services, and that was one of the more like the easier decisions to make, right? If it is a repeatable service in a consistent manner, let's go global and don't have to do like a nearshoring because that will be expensive. That thing may also change because not only because of the geopolitical event, right? There has been incidents where there has been natural disaster. I mean, I remember I was working in a country when I was working for a company when bulk of our services was provided from India, and there was a tsunami in southern part of India, and there was a huge impact in operation because the company was so much vested in one single provider, one single geography that caused issues. And the lessons learned from that onwards, they started doing nearshoring capability or some alternate global sourcing as well. So I think that trend will expedite with the recent conflict and the positions different countries are taking. So we will have more of self-reliance or nearshoring capability, but the implementation will vary depending on the country. But overall aspect of bringing services close to in-house and nearshore, in my opinion, will increase.
Tom,
So
you want to come back on that as well?
the interesting thing about the interconnection of the network is that more than any other time in history, the decisions that are made by one country or a group of companies, Partha referenced the EU's activities that are underway, end up affecting everybody. I mean, the classic example is the GDPR of the EU. I mean, you look at the United States and we have state governments. We have a failure of the federal government to step up, and state governments are stepping in, and they're using the GDPR as a model. When China stepped in and established privacy standards, they used the GDPR as a model with the caveat that the state would not have to really obey it. But the point of the matter is that in an interconnected world, what applies in one nation can end up having an effect in another. And I'm back to the role of the companies. The companies should not want to exist in that kind of a balkanized market. The reason that they have become so massively successful, the platform companies in particular, so massively successful, is because they have had this make once, profit from its interconnectivity to everywhere model. And if that becomes balkanized as a result of different countries taking different approaches, it is harmful to them. And therefore, again, I go back, we need the companies, rather than saying, oh, no regulation, nothing. We need the companies to step forward and say, here is how we need to think anew about what a responsible regulatory environment looks like.
Yes, and I could see Genius nodding when the GDPR was mentioned. So I guess my question to her would be, how do you deal with those different type of regulation coming in, that fragmentation, and making sure that you can future-proof the network if, I guess, the overall situation changes?
Well, I think the reasons, what is happening, between Russia and Ukraine, and has also been, I think, will be actually driving, whether we like it or not, a lot of countries starting to look at, to test what happened if they're actually isolated from the world because of other countries, do not like, or basically, other countries do not agree to certain policies, so, that actually will threaten, basically, what we earlier were thinking about, what Tom was talking about, the platform, how the ability, all this are interconnected, how to actually, do it once and actually replicate to all the rest of the countries. I think because of what is happening recently, that actually may actually turn, you know, the table against what we were actually, pushing for, like the industry trying to, educate, the regulators, what is actually best for innovation and also what is best for, the business. So there seems to be something that actually may, push for, each country, making it even more fragmented. That is one of the worry that, we're seeing.
So
But I guess from your perspective,
Dexter,
go ahead, Tom. Yeah,
there's a great line that Oscar Wilde wrote in Lady Windermere's Fan, in which he said there are two great tragedies in life: not getting what you want and getting it. And the reality for the tech companies, particularly the platform companies, is that their successful intervention to keep there from being national oversight, regulatory oversight, is resulting in the kind of balkanization that Genius was talking about.
yes, and I guess a follow up on that from my perspective. Obviously, Genius, you come from you're working for a telecoms operator, which is in a sense more used to that national regulation because you work on a country by country basis. Even though you mentioned it as a risk, do you also seek maybe an opportunity because you know to deal with those country to country level compared to maybe some of your new competitors on the platform side, which are also entering the market without have less of that experience?
Yes, for all the services that we roll out, we have to actually comply to, different countries' regulations. But, there's a lot of, because, we are actually coming up with a lot of new technologies. That's not really the regulations that's actually in place. So there's a lot of, like discussion, and also, working together with the regulators in each country. All right. In order for us, to see how to shape some of the, policy that is actually going to be beneficial, for the, the business writing or using the new technologies. That's a lot of work because a lot of these is actually not defined, as what we talk about, all this AI, all this basically, virtual reality, there's no clear regulation actually defined for a lot of these areas. So, which means that a lot of work for everyone, especially when we want to offer a global service across multiple regions and countries.
Yes, and I think at least to what both Tom and Parsa have said, and also you've said during a discussion in terms of that industry trying to lead and trying to be there in terms of making sure that the regulation works. Because I think, and that could be almost kind of the end of the discussion there, but technology has become geopolitical, is becoming geopolitical, and we're kind of not moving away from, I guess, the last 30 years when it was kind of very much outside and the platform and everybody else could be there. So I'd like to thank you all for your time today. I think a few takeaways from me would be digital transformation is happening. It's not a matter of yes or no. It's a matter of when. Regulation continues to represent a risk because of security tends to be the big one. We're moving more and more into software. Software is inherently vulnerable. The attack surface is increasing. So that's kind of one question to figure out. But there's far more to discuss in terms of the new technology which are coming in, and the fragmentation of the world and kind of the balkanization of the world is not helping in that sense. So I would like right now to thank our wonderful speakers, Genius Wong, Tom Wheeler, and Pastor Chakrabarti, for a fantastic conversation. I would like to thank once again Tata Communications for sponsoring the event and making it possible for everybody to listen in. And also, if you'd like to join similar events, please go to impact.economist.com and you'll see all of our list of events there. Goodbye and take care.